Starting off this list in our number 10 spot, we have this scary water discovery. Researchers at Michigan State University have been working to try and provide us with a worldwide view on how climate change will affect our water availability. We obviously need water to survive, and we are quickly running out of it, and climate change certainly isn't helping. In an article posted to the National Science Foundation on February 2nd, these researchers announced their discovery that if we continue on the same trajectory we're on, by the end of the 21st century, the global land area and population facing extreme drought could more than double. This is an extremely dire discovery, and researchers have said that if things don't change, areas of the southern hemisphere where water scarcity is already a problem will be disproportionately affected, and that it could affect food security and escalate human migration and conflict. This study definitely shed a light on a problem that we don't always think about. In our number 9 spot today, we have this AirPod mishap. Bradford Gauthier woke up in the morning feeling fine, except for one bizarre thing. When he tried to drink a glass of water, he found that he was unable to actually swallow the water down. He realized he felt a bit of pressure in his chest and thought, oh, maybe my throat is just dry, since he had been shoveling snow the night before. Bradford had fallen asleep with his AirPods in, so he went to look for them lost in the bed so that he could get them back into their case to charge. After searching for quite a while, he realized he could only find one, and that's when other members of his household began suggesting what might have happened to the other one. After an emergency room visit and an x-ray, doctors discovered exactly what Bradford's family assumed had happened. In his sleep, Bradford had accidentally swallowed one of the AirPods, and it was lodged in the lower part of his esophagus. Luckily, he was able to quickly get it removed, and apparently it actually still works, despite the volume being a bit lower. In our number 8 spot today, we have this horrible Vancouver Island discovery. One Vancouver Island resident made a pretty terrible discovery recently as she was walking along a beach in Nanaimo. As she was walking, she unfortunately came across a sea lion that didn't have its head. Of course, this is never a good discovery, but matters were made worse when she ended up finding 5 sea lions in total with the same devastating injury. A marine mammal expert for the area explained that the injuries are definitely deliberate, which means that there is someone or some people who are going around doing this to the sea lions, which is absolutely horrible. The expert also explained that some of these sea lions were Steller sea lions, which are an at-risk species, which certainly makes the crime even worse than it already was. There will be an investigation into these discoveries, and hopefully they'll be able to figure out what exactly is going on there. In a number 7 spot today, we have this creepy garbage bag discovery. A New Zealand resident was walking along one day when they came across 2 full garbage bags. This can be a sign of something pretty gruesome, so they decided to call the police. Once the bags were open, it was confirmed that luckily they weren't filled with human remains, as was the worst case scenario, but they did contain something pretty unsettling. These garbage bags were full of mannequin heads. I'm sure this probably terrified the person who opened the bags when they first took a look. I'm glad it wasn't anything harmful, but there definitely is something weird about this discovery that feels very ominous. At the end of the day, I am just glad that no one got hurt. In our number 6 spot today, we have this Nebraska semi-truck discovery. Nebraska police pulled over a semi-truck on January 22nd after it had been clocked going 85 miles per hour in a 65 miles per hour zone, and it was also said that the driver wasn't quite in his lane. Upon further inspection, police discovered that not only did the driver appear to be under the influence, his truck was also carrying a few illicit substances. Authorities revealed that the truck had several hidden concealment points, which is consistent with the substance transport. Of course, the driver ended up being taken into custody where he is awaiting bail, and the truck was towed from the scene for further investigation. In our number 5 spot today, we have this pre-approved vaccine controversy. Since the start of the pandemic, companies have been in a race to create a vaccine that can help return our world to normal. Of course, now in 2021, there are a few options for vaccines that are being distributed, while other companies are in the trial testing phases to ensure that the vaccines are safe for humans. These testing trials are absolutely critical, as there is a level of trust with these kinds of things that is imperative to their success. Well, a biotechnology company recently came under fire after their COVID vaccine, called Covaxin, received regulatory approval from the Drugs Controller General of India, despite it not having gone through stage 3 trials completely. It was only approved for emergency use, so it's not likely it was about to be widely distributed, but it certainly feels safer to wait until it is gone and fully completed all testing trials. In our number 4 spot today, we have this real estate agent creepy discovery. A West Virginia real estate agent was looking around a house she was selling when she came across something that literally made her scream. She unsuspectingly opened the basement door and found a statue of a boy, which certainly would make anyone jump at first. If you thought you were alone and opened a door to this, for a split second, I am sure it would spook you right out, as you might think it was a real person. Aside from that, the statue looks very creepy, like it honestly could be cursed. This statue with the backdrop of an unfinished basement definitely creeps me out just looking at the photo of it. The realtor explained that although she is used to seeing weird and funny things in houses, this is the first time one has scared her so much she screamed. In our number 3 spot today, we have this Australian mom's discovery. As summer holidays were coming to a close and school was about to begin in Australia, one mom decided it was time to get her kids ready for the school year. She grabbed their backpacks in order to fill them up with new school supplies. That is when she grabbed one of her daughter's backpacks only to open it up and find her lunch bag that still had food in it from when summer holidays began last year. Of course, this is an honest mistake and pretty much completely harmless, aside from the mom having the horrific task of figuring out what to do with the rotten food and undoubtedly smelly Tupperware container. This mom definitely deserves some extra love after that. In our number 2 spot today, we have this mechanic discovery. A mechanic's TikTok has gone viral after a completely shocking discovery was made. His username is chaos_no, but I believe that the account is now private. Apparently, a customer had brought in her car to get it inspected after she believed her ex-boyfriend had placed a tracking device on it. The mechanic was unfortunately able to prove her fears correct when he found exactly what she suspected was there. Unfortunately, there hasn't been any update on what exactly happened after they found the device, and I'm not exactly sure what can be done in this situation, but I am very glad they found it, and really glad that the mechanic took the woman seriously and really searched for it. In the comments of the video, there were a lot of people sharing similar experiences, and I honestly had no idea that this was such a common occurrence. In the number 1 spot today, we have Caris LeVert. Caris LeVert is an NBA player with the Indiana Pacers. He was first drafted in 2016 by the Pacers, but was then traded to the Brooklyn Nets, where he played until he was traded back to the Pacers this year. When you're traded to a new team, there is a mandatory health screening that you have to go through. Caris was doing this screening and received an MRI when doctors discovered a mass on his left kidney. On January 25th, he underwent a successful surgery to remove this mass, and it was confirmed that it was a type of kidney cancer called renal cell carcinoma. It is said that Caris luckily doesn't need any further treatment, and he should be making a full recovery, which is amazing news. He explained how the trade potentially saved his life because he was feeling 100% healthy and had no symptoms telling him that anything was wrong. The mandatory screening for this trade let him know what was going on in his body, and I am so glad that they caught it in time.
Number 10, Amazon tools. The Amazon rainforest is home to many unique and dangerous creatures, as well as unsolved mysteries and lost civilizations. But did you know that the Amazon was actually once home to giants? At least this evidence discovered in 2012 seems to point to that being the truth. A group of Ecuadorian researchers ventured into the thick forest in order to follow ancient legends of a city of giants, and they actually found it. They found massive stone structures and even a large pyramid. The stones being so precisely cut and arranged that it could not have been just formed by the forces of nature. Within these structures, they also found massive stone tools that were too large for any normal-sized human to use, including hammers and chisels and other building tools. While some people do still chalk it up to natural formations, the team and many others stand by their belief that this city was once home to a race of giants. Number 9, giant skeleton. In 1890 in France, a man named Georges Vacher made a skeletal discovery in a Bronze Age cemetery in Castelnau. 3 separate bone fragments were found that came from both the arm and the leg, or humerus and tibia bones for all the scientists out there. The bones seem to date back to the Neolithic era, which was around 10,000 to 4,000 BC, and they are thought to be evidence of one of the largest human beings ever. The man who discovered them used the size of the bone fragments to estimate the total size of the person, which would have been around 11.5 feet tall. In 1892, the bones were sent to a university in France to be carefully studied by a professor of pathological anatomy, him admitting that the bones represented a quote, very tall race. A few years later, giant skulls were found in another French cemetery and also sent away for even more study. Number 8. Bigfoot. The first discovery of Sasquatch or Bigfoot footprints goes all the way back to the year 1811. Since then, there have been countless reports of Bigfoot sightings and encounters, and with the invention of photo and video cameras came massive amounts of apparent real footage of Bigfoot. Bigfoot is most often described as being a giant humanoid creature around 15 feet tall who tends to hang out in the woods and ignore fabricated mating calls from Bigfoot hunters on their television shows. These sightings also span all the way across the entire world, each country and culture having their own representation and name for the mysterious creature. From the Russian Yeti to the Australian Yowie, they're apparently everywhere. So while many photos and recordings of Bigfoot have been debunked, there are many people who truly believe the Bigfoot is real, and who's to say they couldn't potentially be a long-lost race of giants who had to move into the woods as society evolved. Number 7. West Virginia giants. The giant skeletons discovered in France aren't the only reports of giant remains being found. They have also been found in American soil, specifically in West Virginia. In 1774, a man named Jack Parsons was walking along a flooded river when he saw a bone sticking out of the ground, and like any normal person would do, he pulled it out, discovering it was a femur, but it was almost twice the size of his own. Alongside it, he found more bones and discovered a skeleton that was around 8 feet tall. In 1838, excavators found even more remains that were also much taller than the average person. In the 1850s, even more were found, though they soon went missing and were thought to have been stolen and sold. Over the years, even more remains were found in the late 1800s, one skeleton even being over 10 feet tall. The Giant Town and other places across West Virginia have even more stories of discoveries of this race of giants. Number 6. Robert Wadlow. Arguably the most famous real giant who you've probably heard of before is a man who was named Robert Wadlow. If you have read the Guinness Book of World Records or visited one of their walkthrough museums, you've probably seen his picture or stood next to his giant life-size statue. And yes, this guy was actually real, and he was actually that tall. He was just brushing 9 feet tall at the time of his death in the summer of 1940. He was born in 1918, and at the time, no one knew just how tall he was going to be, as he was an average-sized baby weighing 8.7 pounds, which is less than I weighed when I was born, but to be fair, I was a big baby. He then quickly started to shoot up, and by the time he was 8 years old, he was almost 6 feet tall. For reference, the average 8-year-old is usually around 4 feet tall. He became a celebrity for his height, starring in the circus and doing a promotional tour for a shoe company. Unfortunately, his gigantism led to numerous medical issues, and he died at the age of only 22. Number 5. Greek mythology. Now let's turn around and take a look back at some more theoretical proof of giants. Some famous giants from different cultures and legends. I know you may not think of this as real evidence, but I just love digging into these myths and depictions, and if so many different cultures across the world are writing about giants, this could be evidence that they're real, right? So let's start with the Greeks. Atlas was the name of a titan that went to war against Olympus. As we know, the Titans lost, and Atlas was cursed to hold up the sky for the rest of eternity. Atlas also had a run-in with Perseus, who was a slayer of monsters. Atlas tried to scare Perseus away, and in response, Perseus took Medusa's head out of his bag and turned Atlas to stone, creating the range that is now known as the Atlas Mountains. But hey, at least he doesn't have to hold up the sky anymore. Number 4. Irish giants. Irish mythology believes that a race of giants known as the Fomorians were actually the original settlers of Ireland. Balor was the king of these one-eyed giants and was also the god of death. It was said that anyone who looked at him would die instantly. Because of this, he constantly kept his eye closed until it was absolutely necessary. A prophecy said that he would be killed by his own grandson, so he locked his daughter away to prevent her from having any children. But this didn't work, as a minor god snuck in and got comfortable with his daughter, and they loved each other very much, and she had 3 kids. But Balor was still thinking with his head, and so he threw all 3 kids into the ocean. Problem solved, right? Wrong. One of the sons survived and was raised by the god of the sea. The kid grew up, led a bunch of Irish gods into battle, and he killed Balor by ripping out his eye. Goodbye, King of Giants, you really tried your best. Number 3, the Bible. When you think of giants in the Bible, you may think of the story of Goliath, a giant who was defeated by a regular-sized shepherd named David. Goliath was a champion from the city of Gath, which is a place where a race of giants apparently originated from. His exact size is up in the air, but many people believe he was around 9'7" and wore a large amount of bronze armor. And here's how the story goes. David goes out to face Goliath, holding the fate of his people in his hands. So of course he's armed with a very menacing weapon, a slingshot. David uses his trusty slingshot to fire a rock, which hits Goliath right between his eyes, and Goliath falls down and dies immediately. Pretty good shot. David and Goliath has become an infamous story for representing the underdog, though my personal favorite story about underdogs is the movie Underdog, released in 2007. Number 2, Gog Magog. If you know me, then you know I'm constantly looking for names to name my future children, and this one is definitely a strong contender. Gog Magog is the name of the last British giant. A Welshman wrote a book about how early Britain was inhabited by a race of giants. One of them being Gog Magog, 12 feet tall and able to easily uproot an oak tree. One day the giants attacked Brutus, descendant of the Trojans, and all the giants were killed except for good old Goggy. Brutus took Gog Magog to his second in command, who was apparently super into giant wrestling. The two wrestled and Gog Magog was going pretty ham and crushed a few of the guy's ribs. But this didn't kill the guy and instead just made him super angry. Fueled by his rage, the man was able to pick up Gog Magog, carry him up a hill, toss him off a cliff to his death, ridding the world of Britain's last giant. Rest in peace, Gog Magog. Number 1, Hrungnir. Giants exist all over Norse mythology, but the one that is known as the biggest and baddest is called Hrungnir. One day, Odin, the leader of the Norse gods of Asgard, challenged the giant to a horse race, which turns out to be a little unfair when you take into account the fact that Odin was riding his magical 6-legged horse and Hrungnir just had a normal horse. He of course lost, and Odin at least felt a little bad about it, so he invited the giant back to Asgard for a drink. Like me, he couldn't handle his alcohol and started getting a little rowdy, saying that he would kill all of the gods of Asgard except for 2 goddesses, which he would bring back with him to the realm of the giants. The Asgardians were like, hey bro, that's kinda not cool, and told Thor to come deal with this clown. So the two met for battle, Hrungnir wearing stone armor and with a massive stone as his weapon. Thor picked up his magical hammer Mjolnir and it broke through both the stone and Hrungnir's face, killing him. I'm noticing a pattern in these stories that the giant always ends up dying, and probably why they're not around today.
Kicking off the list at number 10, let's dive in. Barracuda. Exploring the deep is dangerous if you're a diver, of course, not because of the deadly ocean life surrounding your every direction, but because if you come up too quickly, major health problems will follow. But if not that, probably a deadly barracuda, equally as scary. This deep discovery was made by user Arira95. I'm pulling real events for this one from real deep sea divers. We're going to the real content for this one, so buckle up. One time when my parents visited Mexico, they went diving and my mom was slightly lower than my dad looking at the ocean floor. My mom had on a gold necklace that was floating in the water around her, and it was a sunny day and a fairly shallow dive at this point, so it was sparkling. My mom looked below at all the critters when my dad grabbed her and started frantically shaking her arm to get her attention. I'm sweating reading this. She looked up and a barracuda was was directly in front of her, staring intently at that shiny necklace. She slowly moved up her hand to cover the necklace, and they slowly and calmly moved away from it, and it took off without bothering them anymore. But still pretty unsettling, and taught my mom to be a little more aware of her surroundings when she's diving. I mean, fair, but I mean, no one expects a barracuda. Also, if your mom wants to dive with chains on, that's pretty sick. You won't catch her slacking. Even in the depths of the sea, she's like, I'm ready. I don't care who shows up. I don't care who I bump into. Water shoes and bling. Check and check. Let's go diving. Number 9, venomous sea snakes. Last year in the deep waters off Australia's coast, of course it's Australia, always Australia, a sea snake that was once thought to be extinct has been rediscovered. How fun. He's like, psych, you thought. Just when you thought the ocean couldn't get even more dangerous, now we got new sea snakes to worry about. The short-nosed sea snake hasn't been seen in 23 years, and they would often live near Ashmore Reef. But last year, divers found one 67 meters below the surface in the twilight zone, which is pretty wild. Just lurking in the dark, just hanging out, meditating. The Australian Institute of Marine Science is responsible for this discovery, and the team calls this a second chance to protect and further understand the species. And an up-close personal encounter is brought to life from this diver. Apparently, this happens from time to time before major storms. Snakes can sense an oncoming storm, so what they try and do is latch onto something heading in the direction towards shore, so they don't have to burn energy and they can just grab onto like a barrel or something and then just, make its way there. Pretty smart. So this diver was exploring, nothing was going crazy or anything like that, and then he felt a snake wrap onto his leg because he felt a storm was coming in. The diver didn't even know that a storm was coming. The snake did, and he wrapped its snake self around his leg. As soon as I was in the shallows, it uncurled and headed up the beach where it hid under a breadfruit tree. That was from a diver named Specialist Celery. Great name, also terrifying experience. I don't like snakes in water or on land. Next, number 8, surprise tiger shark. Yeah, not something you want to see diving in the deep. A tiger shark. A glowing shark, left shark, I don't care. I want none of the shark smoke. This deep sea discovery comes from user Stormcutter. Sick name, a little bit better of a diver name. They say, I know a guy who was out diving for crayfish and lobster by the ocean. Also, the I know a guy trick, it was totally you. Don't lie to us. Crayfish often hide under the rocks, so as he was diving, a tiger shark emerged from a cave and rammed him, breaking his arm and ribs. This guy got shucked by a shark. That's insane. He said the shark was testing him out. Yeah, I'd say. That's pretty sweet, man. I'm glad you survived, honestly. I bet you couldn't wait to tell people what happened. You're like, oh, my ribs? Yeah, I got sideswiped by a tiger shark. Yeah, he's feeling testy. You know how tiger sharks do. If you're wondering what that experience may have looked like, this is footage of a rare tiger shark in New Zealand, lurking in the deep. Number 7, Humpback Mama. This deep dive happened about a year ago. A diver named Sidetrack38, that's their username, not their legal name, although that would be pretty sweet. Sidetrack38, he's like, what's up? They were exploring the ocean one afternoon when all of a sudden they got charged by a mother humpback whale. The divers shared their experience online, saying, her curious calf had swum around us and we were between her and the calf. 2 of us never even saw her coming. We were watching the baby, but our third diver saw her come. She kicked down and swam under us last minute. We didn't see anything until that 60-foot freight train passed just underneath us. Whales are beautiful. They're beautiful but terrifying creatures, my friend. Glad you didn't get a broken rib or back in this case, because whales, they like to go pretty deep.
Just view.
Just trying to figure us out.
Incredible.
Yeah, this is amazing.
Justin, you want the reds off?
Look at that view. I hope we're getting screen captures of this.
Number 6, mako shark. Mako sharks are one of the fastest sharks in the world. I'll start by saying that. Just get that fact in your head. Given this list so far, I would also start sweating if I were you. This is a scary one. This deep dive horror story comes from username One Dumb Diver. Great name. They clearly made this account just to share this occasion, so let's dive in. Nowadays, we dive with shark shields, which emit electronic pulses that freak the sharks out and keep them away. But back then, what we used was essentially a chainmail sleeve. The idea being that sharks hate the taste of metal, so if you give it your arm, it'll bite down, decide you're gross, and then move along. So I wait, it comes over, and I make a perfect move to give it my arm. However, just before the crunch, it occurred to me that I had left my sleeve on my bed. Now I had a huge open, gashing wound on my arm from the bite in open water, and I trailed blood everywhere. Not an ideal scenario. So once the shock finally wore off, you realize that you're in salt water, and salt and open wounds, they don't feel good. In a panic, I dropped my weight belt and shot up to the surface without any sort of waiting period. Not great. Because I hadn't been paying attention to the currents, I was approximately a quarter mile downstream of my boat, which meant that I had to swim back up to it. After getting bitten by a shark, imagine having to swim, that is a nightmare scenario. Glad you're okay. Also, you're not a dumb diver, you're experiencing the things. You're figuring it out. You're doing great. You're brave. I don't even like going in lakes. Number 5, more sea snakes. Coming from Patrick667 about a year ago as well, they posted, so 3 days ago I went snorkeling off Mimba Island in Zanzibar. Everything went normal and we started heading back, so I grabbed my net and I put my black fins, my black mask, snorkel, and black wetsuit inside. Once back ashore, I grab my bag, jump off the boat, and head to the rental office to return said equipment. At that point, I feel my bag is moving somehow. At first look, it seemed like a flat black worm squirming quickly. After rotating the bag, I realized I was looking at only the tail of a 1 meter long black sea snake, one of the most venomous reptiles ever, trying to get out of the net. Like in the lobby. How it got there, I have no freaking clue. That is a nightmare scenario. Imagine being like, thanks so much, I had a great time. Here's a sand dollar. Also, don't mind the venomous snake. Number 4, the frilled shark. Back in 2004, marine biologists discovered this dinosaur, the frilled shark, just hanging out, just lurking about 870 meters below the surface. So if you're anywhere around there, watch out. This one looks like an eel almost. It's so scary looking, it's so slippery and quick. Frilled sharks can grow up to 7 feet long and they fight in the dark. They don't need to see to attack you, which is pretty terrifying considering all these deep dive stories are all in the pitch black. So unless you're a deep diver, you're not really gonna run into the frilled shark. Have you ever dealt with one of these? Are you a diver? Are you watching this because you're a diver? Please comment down below if you are. Comment some of your personal experiences. These were a nightmare to read. I couldn't even finish half of them. Everything is so dangerous and so fast underwater. Number 3, snapping shrimp. This little guy can literally create a sonic boom as it attacks you. That's how fast it is. You won't see him coming, and neither did this diver. Here's a clip of a mantis shrimp punching through a diver's gear. Yeah, right through their water shoes. Bam!
Ow, that really hurt.
They're so quick. Oh my god, they're tiny, but they really hit. They're often found in coral reefs, oyster reefs. These little guys, these pistol shrimp, they hit their prey at 100 kilometers per hour. And in doing so, a large air bubble is created, and because this, Mike Tyson shrimp is so quick with the left hook, the following pop is around 200 decibels. The sound alone can stun its prey, and if they're lucky, it sometimes kills them. That's how you want to go out. You don't want to go out with one of these Superman punches to the neck. Number 2, comb stars. Ocean life is by far the scariest thing out there. We have no idea what's in our oceans. We discover some crazy shit every year. Some deep sea fish with bioluminescence are for sure aliens, while others are just natural predators that look scary. Like the comb star, for example. This guy was not in Finding Nemo. He would have been a weird addition. A comb star is a starfish that contains tetrodotoxin, which is this deadly neurotoxin that can cause paralysis. Yeah, Finding Nemo, that movie would be over in 8 minutes if this guy was there. Per every gram of comb star flesh, there's enough toxin to take out 500 mice. So if you have a mice problem, honestly, you can call one guy. It's a very specific weird call, but I know how you can do it. A little bit of tetrodotoxin. Tetrodotoxin? Tetrodotoxin, that's what it's called. And finally, coming in at number 1, the electric eel. Awesome, that's the worst thing I've ever seen. Great. The moray eel, first of all, don't do what he just did. Don't go up to a random eel and start rubbing it like it's a genie lamp. That's not smart. It's not a Great Dane. You don't want to do that. That was the moray eel. That one can bite your fingers off in like 2 seconds. But you should never touch an eel in the first place because a lot of them are electric. Yeah, just like that MGMT song that's now stuck in our heads. As its name suggests, there's types of eels that can mess you up even if you were to get the first hit. Specifically, the newly discovered 2.5 meter Electrophorus volti, appropriately named after Alessandro Volta, aka the guy who invented the battery. This eel can release a shock up to 860 volts, which is more than 7 times the voltage of a wall plug. A swimming wall plug that gets hungry. Nice. We love nature. I'm never swimming again.
Number 10. 7,000-year-old execution grave. In 2013, near Halberstadt, archaeologists were excavating a Neolithic settlement site when they came across a grisly discovery. The team, led by Christian Meyer, found a burial pit filled with nearly complete skeletons of 9 people who lived approximately 7,000 years ago. Through testing of isotopes in their bones and teeth, which are different between people depending on diet and other factors, scientists deduced that these people were from a different location than the rest of the bodies that were buried in the area. The 9 skeletons were also in positions that would indicate that they were thrown into the pit somewhat haphazardly, as opposed to being buried ceremoniously like some of the others near the same site were. The most disturbing part is how this grave differs from other graves around the country. In all of these other sites, the dead have all perished in different ways, as made clear with the forensic analysis of the bones, from spears to blunt force to natural causes. However, in the Halberstadt site, all of the dead have the same fatal wound on the back of the head, implying that these people were executed in the same precise way, with a blow from a blunt weapon in the same spot. The archaeologists believe that this, combined with the fact that the dead found were mostly men, shows that these people were an attacking party who were clearly unsuccessful in their raid. Number 9. Sunken ship. Before I tell you this next dark discovery, make sure to hit that like and subscribe button so that we can keep bringing you amazing content. First found in 2020, this 400-year-old wooden ship was found at the bottom of the river Trave, insanely well preserved. Researchers say that since wood rots so quickly underwater in this region, they were surprised at how much of the ship remained intact. The ship is believed to be a single-masted cargo vessel between 20 and 25 meters long, and sunk standing almost completely upright. Around 150 wooden cargo barrels were found in the wreck that were filled with quicklime, an ingredient for mortar used in stonework made from burning limestone. Because of this specialized cargo, scientists believe that the ship was sailing from Scandinavia to regions of northern Germany that don't have any limestone. Marine researchers have been amazed at how well preserved the ship is, and they believe this is due to a layer of mud that happened to cover it when it finally rested on the bottom of the river. The mud kept the wood from rotting, but it also protected it from a type of saltwater clam known as the shipworm, which is very, very good at destroying submerged wood. Research and underwater excavations are still ongoing, and the team even believes that they may find remains of some of the long-lost crew that was aboard when the ship met its final resting place. Number 8. Found in the foliage. In 1980, 69-year-old Paul L. went for a walk in the forest near the town of Bruckberg. He did not tell anyone where he was going, but he left a farewell note for his family as he knew that this would be his last walk. His family searched for years, but he was never found. And in 2009, a teenage boy was walking through the same forest and noticed something strange, a bone lying on the ground. And after he brought it to the attention of the police, law enforcement did a thorough search of the area and discovered a skeleton 11 meters off the ground in a spruce tree. This chilling find is only amplified by the fact that both the body and a pistol were tied to the same tree. Police investigators believe that Paul L. climbed the tree, tied himself to it, and took his own life. And this is what made the body so difficult to find. I mean, who looks for a skeleton in a tree? Number 7. German Stonehenge. Most of us know about Stonehenge, a prehistoric monument in England consisting of circles made with massive stone slabs. No one's 100% sure who made it or what it was used for other than rituals, but it's not the only place of its kind in the world. In 1991, a plane was flying towards Berlin and someone noticed a strange structure below. When people went to investigate, they discovered this henge. It consists of concentric circles made out of massive wooden poles. The largest of the circles measures 115 meters or 380 feet, which actually makes it larger than England's Stonehenge. Archaeologists have since found multiple burial sites containing the remains of men and women of all ages who appear to have died in a sort of ritual sacrifice, some of which appear to be quite brutal. Weapons such as axes, along with drinking vessels and butchered animal bones were also found at the site. However, new excavations have found evidence of settlements as well, implying that not only was this place used for rituals and solstice celebrations, but also as a place for locals to live. Number 6. Stashed secrets. In August of 2021, a history teacher was cleaning and making repairs to his aunt's house in Hagen after there had been severe flooding damage. When he removed a piece of rotted board, he found a small, 1-foot wide hidden area, and inside he saw a newspaper dated in 1945. When he continued to look further, he discovered many German military artifacts from World War II, including a portrait of the mustached leader of Germany, brass knuckles, a revolver, military patches, and many letters and documents. It's believed that the house was once the local headquarters for the National Socialist People's Welfare Organization, or the NSV at the time, which was in charge of doling out the riches stolen from Jewish groups and individuals during the war. In other words, a safe house for bad guys. But the family says that they had no idea the history of the building when they purchased it in the 60s. Things were so haphazardly thrown and hidden in the wall that researchers believe that it must have been done in quite a hurry when the Allied troops closed in on the city. With no time to dispose of the important documents, they hid them in the walls, making for quite a discovery 76 years later. Number 5. Reused graves. In August of 2022, archaeologists were doing a preventative dig at the site of a newly planned rainwater retention basin in Tuttlingen, and came across a late Stone Age culture grave dating back to 3000 BC. While no human remains from that era have been found, the other items in the burial site imply that they were graves, mostly the pottery made from broken ceramic indicative of that time period, which would have been adorned with textures and pictures for the dead. However, there was another discovery made shortly after, in the same spot. More items were uncovered by archaeologists, including swords, jewelry, and drinking glasses, but this time they were from the Middle Ages, around 500 AD. That's right, a medieval gravesite on top of one from the Stone Ages, meaning that this same burial ground was used again 3,500 years after it was the first time. Excavation is still ongoing, so who knows what else they'll find. Number 4. The Unicorn Cave Carving. Deep in the Harz Mountains lies the Einhornhöhle, or the Unicorn Cave. It got its name from treasure hunters who thought that the remains they discovered there were those of the mythological animal, when most likely they were something else entirely, the bones of a prehistoric giant deer. In 2014, researchers discovered a 51,000-year-old art piece carved into the toe bone of a species of deer that existed during the Ice Age. Originally thought to be butchering marks, further experiments showed that the marks made were intentional, and that the bone had most likely been boiled first to make it softer and easier to carve. This shows how early on humans were creating what could be called art, with the detailing being deliberate and complex, and it's a tragedy that so much of this has been lost to time. The story goes back even further, because what researchers found near the same area in 1990 will shock you. Number 3. Hominin weaponry. Before the bone carving was found, archaeologists were already uncovering nearby sites, and in 1990 they discovered something truly remarkable. Perfectly preserved weapons, artifacts, and bones were uncovered that were approximately 300,000 years old, and that is absolutely insane to me. Ancient throwing sticks, push lances, and other tools were found, some of which scientists have yet to still divine the function of. Closer examination showed how the weapons had worn from use, and that told researchers what they were used for and how often. There were even marks in some of them that seemed to have been made from chipping bone. Now who knows if that was from an animal or another early human, it's almost impossible to tell. But the fact that these exist at all is amazing to me. Number 2. The Headless Horse, man. The legend of the Headless Horseman is well known around the world, and many cultures have their own version of the story of a headless rider on a dark horse come to do evil. But in Germany, they seem to have gotten it mixed around. In an ancient cemetery near Knittlingen, archaeologists revealed a perplexing discovery. In a 1,400-year-old grave there was a man buried, and next to him was a horse that was missing its head. Further searching in the surrounding area showed that many of the graves had jewelry like pearl necklaces and bracelets, as well as everyday goods like food stored in ceramic pots buried alongside the bodies. This led researchers to believe that they were not sacrifices or offerings, but a gift to be used in the afterlife. And the gifts you were given depended on your status. And since this man was buried alongside most of a horse, it would imply that the man who rested there was of great esteem, and perhaps even owned that horse, and can now ride with them in the afterlife. Either way, headless skeletons of any kind are creepy. We all know of the dark and terrible things that occurred in Germany during World War II, but our number 1 dark discovery came right at the end of the war. When Allied troops entered the town of Dachau, they thought that they were ready for anything. Whether that was German officers ready to fight, or booby traps laid by Axis forces, but nothing could compare them for what they saw when they entered the camp. But before they even entered the camp, soldiers were put off by a foul odor. They believed that they were upwind of some sort of chemical factory, but they soon discovered what was known as the death train, where bodies of thousands of innocent people were laid with no regard to their dignity. These people had their lives taken for absolutely no reason, and when they were discovered, soldiers forced members of the German army and other sympathizers to help give them a proper burial. With the arrival of the Allied troops in Dachau and the liberation of the camp and its survivors, the war was all but won, and the evil German leader took his own life the next day. The dark history of the camp can still be felt by visitors to this day, and helps people learn of the worst of humanity, and the best of humanity, who fought to keep the evils at bay.